What happens when an undercover CEO steps into his own company and discovers a toxic work culture? Nathan Caldwell thought his hardware store chain was running smoothly until customer complaints and high employee turnover told a different story. Instead of relying on reports, he disguised himself as a worker and uncovered shocking truths: lazy management, mistreated employees, and ignored customers. But he didn't just observe, he took action, firing toxic leaders and rewarding those who truly cared. This is the story of how one undercover CEO turned his failing business around from the ground up. Let's dive in. Nathan Caldwell had always taken pride in the company he built from the ground up. Fix-It Hardware started as a single mom-and-pop hardware store in his hometown, but through years of dedication, it expanded into a 15-store chain serving communities across the state. His vision had always been clear: offer quality products, provide excellent customer service, and treat employees fairly. Yet, despite his best intentions, troubling reports had been piling up over the past few months. Customers were frustrated, employees were quitting, and overall store performance was declining. Every time Nathan brought up these concerns in executive meetings, he received the same dismissive responses. It's just a rough patch, retail has ups and downs, people will always complain. But Nathan wasn't convinced. If it were just a few isolated incidents, he might have let it slide. But this was widespread, and every attempt to get clear answers from his district managers resulted in vague excuses or surface-level solutions. Something was wrong, and he wasn't about to wait for another quarterly report to confirm it. Nathan believed in leading from the ground up, not just from behind a corporate desk. If he wanted real answers, he had to see the reality firsthand. So instead of relying on secondhand reports, he made a bold decision. He would go undercover. With the help of a professional disguise team, Nathan transformed himself into an average handyman in his late 50s. A scruffy jacket, baseball cap, glasses, and a slightly hunched posture completed the look. No one would suspect that he was the multi-millionaire CEO of Fix-It Hardware. He chose to visit one of the most problematic stores, one with a high employee turnover rate, frequent customer complaints, and declining sales. His plan was simple. First, he would shop like a regular customer, observing the store's service quality, employee behavior, and customer interactions. Then, if he saw deeper problems, he would return as an entry-level worker to understand the management culture from the inside. As he walked through the store's front doors, pushing an empty cart, Nathan took a deep breath. Whatever he found, one thing was certain: his company was about to change. Nathan Caldwell stepped into Fix-It Hardware as just another customer, blending into the steady stream of shoppers. Dressed as a middle-aged handyman with a worn-out work jacket, faded jeans, a ball cap pulled low, and a slight limp, he looked nothing like the sharp-dressed CEO featured in corporate newsletters. As he pushed a cart through the aisles, at first glance, everything seemed normal: fully stocked shelves, employees moving about, and customers browsing the store. But Nathan knew better than to take appearances at face value. He was here to observe, and it didn't take long before the cracks began to show. Near the tools section, a contractor in dusty work boots and a utility belt was looking frustrated as he scanned the shelves. "Hey, buddy, you got any 1/2-inch masonry drill bits?" he finally called out to a nearby employee stacking paint cans. The worker, a young man with earbuds in, barely glanced up from his phone. "If it ain't on the shelf, we don't have it," he muttered, then went right back to scrolling. Nathan clenched his jaw. This was not the customer service standard he had built his company on. Moving further into the store, he spotted an elderly man struggling to load a heavy box of nails into his cart. A few feet away, an employee leaned against a display, watching but doing nothing to help. Nathan deliberately slowed his cart, waiting to see if the worker would step in, but he never did. With a sigh, Nathan walked over and helped the man lift the box himself, earning a grateful nod. Then, at the checkout counter, Nathan witnessed something that truly disturbed him. A father with a young boy dressed in a dusty work uniform stood at the register, unloading a few small tools and supplies: a hammer, a set of screws, and a roll of electrical tape. As the cashier, Gloria, rang up the total, the man patted his pockets, then frowned. "I think I'm a few dollars short," he muttered, checking his wallet again. Gloria sighed loudly, rolling her eyes. "Well, you'll have to put something back, won't you?" she said in a tone dripping with impatience. The man hesitated, glancing at his son before slowly reaching for the hammer to remove it from his purchase. Before he could, another cashier stepped forward from the next register. "It's okay," she said quietly, pulling a few bills from her own pocket. "I got you." Nathan watched in silence as Emily handed over the cash, refusing to take no for an answer. "You need the hammer," she told the man with a smile, "and good tools shouldn't be a luxury." The father's eyes glistened with gratitude as he thanked her. As Nathan left the store, his mind was racing. He had seen the stark contrast between apathy and kindness, between bad leadership and good employees being overlooked. One thing was clear: he needed to go deeper. The next day he would return not as a customer, but as an employee. The next morning, Nathan Caldwell walked into Fix-It Hardware, not as a customer, but as a new stockroom worker named Nick. His disguise had been adjusted. A clean-shaven face, a slightly oversized uniform, and a cheap name tag hastily pinned to his shirt. He had arranged through corporate to be hired as a temporary employee, ensuring that no one in management knew who he really was. His goal? To see what working conditions were really like behind the scenes. The moment he stepped into the stockroom, he saw the disorder. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, some crushed under their own weight. Expired products were shoved into a corner instead of being disposed of properly, and employees milled about with no clear sense of direction. The air smelled of dust and cardboard, and the tension was palpable. A burly, scowling man with a clipboard, Ray, the warehouse supervisor, barely glanced at him. "You're new, whatever," he grunted. "Just move those pallets to the back, and don't ask questions." Nathan nodded, keeping his head down. He wasn't here to challenge anyone, not yet. As he lifted heavy boxes, he listened. "What's the point of trying?" one worker muttered as he leaned against a stack of lumber. "Management doesn't give a damn about us." "No kidding," another replied. "Ray treats us like we're idiots. Ask for help, he'll chew your head off." Nathan kept working, occasionally watching as Ray barked orders at employees with no explanation. If someone made a mistake, they weren't corrected, they were ridiculed. One new hire accidentally placed a shipment of screws in the wrong section. Instead of helping, Ray mocked him in front of everyone. "Did your brain short-circuit or something? Figure it out." Nathan clenched his jaw. Leadership wasn't about bullying, it was about guiding. This wasn't just bad management, it was toxic. During lunch break, Nathan sat near Emily, the cashier he had seen the day before. She looked exhausted but determined. He struck up a casual conversation. "You've been here a long time?" he asked. 2 years, she said, taking a sip of her water. "Started part-time, went full-time last year. But it doesn't matter. Management still treats us like we're disposable." Nathan frowned. "Ray?" "Him, Gloria, the store manager. It's the same story. If you speak up, good luck getting a decent schedule. They push people out if they don't fall in line." Nathan absorbed every word. This wasn't just bad customer service, it was systemic neglect. Employees weren't quitting because they were lazy, they were quitting because they were being driven out. As his shift ended, Nathan knew one thing. It was time to act. After 2 days of working undercover, Nathan had seen enough. The toxic culture in the store was undeniable. Poor leadership, mistreated employees, and customers being pushed aside. He had come in hoping to understand the problem. Now he was determined to fix it. But before he could act, one final incident pushed him over the edge. That afternoon, a young employee hesitantly approached Ray in the stockroom. "Sir, I haven't had my break yet. I was supposed to go 20 minutes ago." Ray snorted, barely looking up from his clipboard. "Break? You think you get a break when we're this busy? Keep working." "But unless you want to find another job, shut up and do what I tell you." Nathan felt something inside him snap. He had watched long enough. He set down the box he was carrying, straightened his posture, and turned to face the entire room. "That's enough." His voice was calm, but the weight behind it cut through the air like a hammer hitting steel. Ray's head jerked up. "Excuse me?" Nathan removed his cap, adjusted his stance, and looked directly at him. The disguise was gone. Nathan Caldwell, CEO of Fix-It Hardware, was standing in front of them. Silence fell over the stockroom. Employees froze mid-ta, their eyes widening in shock. The tension in the room was suffocating. Ray's face paled. "Wait, you're—" "That's right," Nathan interrupted. "For the past 2 days, I've worked here. I've seen how customers are ignored, how employees are mistreated, and how this store is being run into the ground. And I am not happy." From the front of the store, Gloria peered over the counter, confusion flashing across her face as the whispers spread. Employees gathered, some nervous, some relieved, and some waiting to see what would happen next. Nathan stepped forward, his voice steady. "I built this company with respect, for customers, for workers, for the communities we serve. But what I've seen here, this is not fix-it hardware." His gaze locked onto Ray. "And that ends today." Ray opened his mouth to argue, but Nathan wasn't done. "Everyone, gather around. We need to talk." The store had no idea what was about to hit it. A heavy silence filled the store as employees gathered near the registers, their faces a mix of shock, curiosity, and apprehension. Customers watched from a distance, sensing that something significant was unfolding. Nathan stood in the center, no longer the quiet stockroom worker, but the CEO of Fix-It Hardware. His expression was firm, his voice steady. "For the past 2 days, I've seen how this store operates," he began, scanning the crowd. "I've seen how customers are ignored, how employees are mistreated, and how some of you have been working under leadership that doesn't deserve to be in charge." His gaze landed on Ray, who was standing stiffly with crossed arms, and then Gloria, who was now fidgeting, looking anywhere but at him. Nathan turned to Ray first. "Ray, you don't lead, you intimidate. You deny employees their breaks, you refuse to train new hires, and you treat people like they're disposable. That's not leadership, that's bullying." Ray scoffed, shaking his head. "Sir, with all due respect, you don't understand what it's like at ground level. We're understaffed, overworked." "No," Nathan cut in. "You're not understaffed, you're mismanaging the people you have. Employees don't stay in places where they feel disrespected." Ray's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue further. The reality was sinking in. This wasn't a slap on the wrist. This was the end of the line for him. Nathan then turned to Gloria. "And you," he said, his tone sharpening, "I saw how you treated that customer yesterday, a struggling father, short on cash, and instead of showing basic human decency, you humiliated him. That is not the kind of service we stand for." Gloria's face turned red. "I was just following policy," she said defensively. "We can't just give things away for free." "This isn't about policy," Nathan snapped. "It's about how you speak to people, about how you make them feel." He let his words settle for a moment before continuing. "I don't tolerate this kind of attitude in my company. You're on final warning. Either you change or you leave." Then, turning to the rest of the employees, he said, "Fix-It Hardware was built to serve communities and to be a place where employees are respected. Somewhere along the way that vision got lost, but I promise you that changes today." He took a deep breath, then looked toward Emily, who stood near the back, wide-eyed. "Emily, you showed kindness when no one else did. You put the customer first. That's the kind of leadership we need. Effective immediately, you're being promoted to assistant manager." The room was stunned. Emily's mouth dropped open. "What? But I—" "You earned it," Nathan said simply. Turning back to the rest of the team, he finished, "If you're here just for a paycheck without caring about the customers or your coworkers, this isn't the place for you. But if you're willing to work, to respect each other, and to help build something better, then you have my full support. Change starts today." A shift rippled through the employees, some nervous, some hopeful, and some relieved. But one thing was clear. Fix-It Hardware would never be the same again. The next few days at Fix-It Hardware were a whirlwind of change. Nathan wasn't just making speeches, he was taking action. The first major decision was bringing in a new store manager, someone who could rebuild trust and enforce a positive work environment. After careful consideration, he appointed Brian Monroe, a respected leader from another location known for his fairness, efficiency, and ability to turn struggling stores around. Brian wasted no time in setting the tone for the new culture. On his first day, Brian called a staff meeting. He looked every employee in the eye before speaking. "I know things have been rough," he acknowledged, "but we're starting fresh. If you're here to work, grow, and make this store better, I have your back. But if you're here to slack off, intimidate others, or ignore customers, this isn't the place for you." His no-nonsense approach made it clear that Fix-It Hardware was no longer a place where toxic leadership thrived. Nathan also introduced new policies to ensure lasting change. First, employee schedules were restructured, breaks were properly enforced, and shifts were distributed fairly. Next, training programs were revamped, ensuring that new hires were properly equipped for their roles instead of being thrown into the deep end with no guidance. Customer service expectations were reinforced, with mandatory refreshers on how to engage with shoppers respectfully. Not everyone adapted easily. Some employees resisted the changes, unhappy that they could no longer coast through shifts or treat customers poorly without consequences. A handful chose to quit, unwilling to meet the new standards, but for every worker who left, another thrived under the new leadership. Employees who had once felt powerless now had a voice. Nathan also made a personal commitment. He wouldn't just visit stores for inspections anymore. He would regularly check in, not as an outsider, but as someone actively involved in the day-to-day operations. He wanted every worker to know that their concerns mattered. As the toxic atmosphere began to lift, employees started to believe in Fix-It Hardware again. Customers noticed the shift too. One afternoon, an elderly shopper approached Emily at the register. "I don't know what's changed, dear," she said, "but this store feels different. The people here actually seem to care again." Emily smiled. "That's because we do." The transformation at Fix-It Hardware didn't happen overnight, but within a few months the results spoke for themselves. Customer satisfaction soared, employee morale improved, and turnover rates dropped significantly. Employees who had once dreaded coming to work now felt valued and supported. The toxic atmosphere that had defined the store under Ray and Gloria's influence had been replaced with a culture of accountability and respect. Nathan made sure that change wasn't just a one-time fix. He visited regularly, not as a distant CEO, but as someone genuinely invested in the team. He made it a point to speak directly with employees, ask about their experiences, and take action when necessary. Instead of waiting for reports to come across his desk, he now saw the reality of his stores firsthand. Meanwhile, Emily settled into her role as assistant manager. At first, she doubted herself, unsure if she was ready for leadership, but with support from Nathan and Brian Monroe, she quickly found her footing. She focused on mentorship, ensuring that new hires received proper training, and that employees had a voice in shaping store improvements. What had once been a store plagued by disengagement was now a place where workers took pride in their jobs. Customers noticed too. One afternoon, a longtime shopper approached Brian at the customer service desk. "I've been coming here for years," he said, "and I can tell you, this place feels completely different. The staff actually helps people now. They don't act like they just want to get through their shifts." Brian smiled, nodding toward Emily, who was helping a new hire stock shelves efficiently. "That's because we have the right people in charge now," he said. Not everyone embraced the change. A few employees who resisted the new standards either left or were let go, but for those who stayed, the shift in culture made all the difference. Work didn't feel like a battle anymore. Nathan knew that one store's transformation wasn't enough. He wanted this shift to happen across all 15 locations. So he expanded his undercover visits, ensuring that leadership failures weren't being ignored elsewhere. Fix-It Hardware was finally becoming what he had always envisioned, a company built on integrity, fairness, and respect. And this time, he would make sure it stayed that way. As Nathan stood near the entrance of Fix-It Hardware, watching employees interact with customers, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: pride. The store that had once been drowning in negativity was now a place of efficiency, respect, and genuine service. Employees who had once worked in fear of management now felt valued, and customers weren't just another transaction. They were people being treated with care. Nathan turned as Emily approached, her expression a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. "I still can't believe all this happened," she admitted. "A few months ago, I was just a cashier trying to survive the workday. Now, I actually feel like I'm making a difference." Nathan smiled. That's because you are. Leadership isn't about a title, it's about how you treat people. And from what I've seen, you've got the right instincts. She exhaled, shaking her head. It's just, I've worked jobs before where people like Ray and Gloria got away with everything because no one at the top was paying attention. Honestly, I never expected a CEO to actually step in and change things. Nathan's smile faded slightly as he thought back to how disconnected he had been before. That had been his greatest failure, not the decline in customer satisfaction or the employee turnover, but the fact that he had allowed himself to be blind to it all. For too long, he had relied on reports and filtered feedback, never stepping into the reality of his own company. That's my mistake, Nathan admitted. I trusted numbers more than people. I let things slip through the cracks because I wasn't paying attention. That's never going to happen again. Emily gave him a knowing look. So, does that mean you're done going undercover? Or should I expect to see another Nick show up in the stockroom? Nathan chuckled. Let's just say I'll always be watching, but hopefully I won't need a disguise to know what's happening in my own company anymore. He turned toward the store one last time, watching as an employee helped an elderly customer with her heavy bags. The small moments of kindness were no longer exceptions. They were the new standard. Fix-It Hardware had finally become the company he had always intended it to be, and this time he wasn't going to lose sight of it. The story of Nathan Caldwell's undercover journey teaches a powerful lesson about leadership, accountability, and workplace culture. As a CEO, Nathan had built his company with strong values, but over time he became too distant from the day-to-day operations. He relied on reports and secondhand information, failing to see the toxic work environment that had taken root in his stores. It wasn't until he stepped into the reality of his own business, first as a customer, then as an employee, that he truly understood the depth of the problem. The lesson here is that leadership isn't about sitting in an office making decisions from a distance. A true leader is present, engaged, and willing to listen. When Nathan took action, held people accountable, and rewarded the right employees, the entire workplace culture shifted. His experience showed that toxic environments don't fix themselves. Bad leadership must be removed, and good leadership must be nurtured. Most importantly, Nathan learned that companies thrive when employees feel valued and customers are treated with respect. A business isn't just about numbers. It's about the people who run it and the people it serves. And that's a lesson no leader should ever forget.